Memorial Club, a novel by Mozid Mahmud. Published in the USA by Gaudy Boy, an imprint of Singapore Unbound. The Trial. Months later, when Hassan finds himself at the rehabilitation center in Shamoli, he will remember this dream. Seeing a manhole, hospital grounds, beyond it, a vast field. The grasses green blades with dew on their tips. He has a potli bag on his head, chomir's breakfast, khichuri with the husk of the lentils still intact, onions and red chilies. With the food in his arms, he crosses the fields, where his eyes fall to the unending white of catkin. Hassan feels a rumble inside him as he travels past the green and into the white sari-like embrace of the swaying young buds. Chomir walks up to the river with a wooden plow. Indentured for a year as a farmer to Hassan's family, he will tie the cows to the yoke and sit down to eat. His one morsel will assuage half of Hassan's hunger. A river named Poda flows from the raked crevices of the field. In the paddy field on one side of the river, a girl is moving toward him. She looks like Morzina. He hasn't seen her in a long while. She looks the same age as before. The girl, seeing him, has turned her back and is heading the opposite way toward the river. An illusion, perhaps. The girl is not Morzina. Dragging the plow with her toward the river, she looks back at him and then walks away. She does this the way Bilu did. Is she Bilu? Hassan's body jerks in pain. He wonders if Chomir is coming this way. Failing on all fronts to control himself, he wakes up as if he has had a seizure. A sliver of Falgun's late evening light melts through the window and falls over Hassan's eyes. He is alone. He feels alone. All the nonsense he sees in his dreams. In each cell of his body, he feels torment building up. The pain brims over. The last light of the day melts away Hassan's exhaustion, especially from the dream he just had. Fariha isn't home. She has gone to visit her parents. He lies in bed, his legs straight. There's little energy left in him. Fariha will soon be a mother. The prospect of fatherhood leaves him unnerved. He feels like he is too young for it. He is in his 30s. He graduated from university a while ago. His father died recently. Hassan's good university results and his job don't provide him with any pleasure. His marriage, which took place too quickly, does not either, much to his chagrin. His mood worsens as he remembers the dream he just had. One night in 1978, a little more than 2 decades ago. A swampy, grimy little village with a river wriggling down it like one's private parts between one's legs. A river where Hassan learned how to swim in his childhood. Today, this river is dying. It dries up naked with the first murmur of winter. Hassan must have learned how to swim like the freshwater insects. The diving, the floating on your back, the going away somewhere and touching other things within the water. Who had taught him this? Morzina, or Chomir, or perhaps even the family's brownish cow. Morzina had said, "If you don't know how to swim, how will you catch me?" She used to live on the other side of the river. Their tin-shed house, facing south, had a palm tree beside it. The tall tree was a source of pride for the village, especially for Hassan during his adolescence. Only in this regard was Morzina able to differentiate herself from him. They were both similar as students, had the same likes, and played the same games. Everyone knew Morzina as the girl from the palm tree house. You could see the tree from 3 miles away. Vultures would fly and take refuge on the tree when they smelled a plague coming. Hassan never learned where these vultures came from. Were they even birds? When they came to the village, schoolboys and girls would stand in groups for safety. Although the vultures were a terrifying spectacle, their nature was quite calm. They did not eat the food the humans served them. Still, Morzina's grandmother would send her over with food. People in the village made fun of her. They said the vultures were her in-laws. Morzina was very embarrassed. "I don't want to go. You go," she would tell her grandmother. Her grandmother told not to listen to other people. One had to show mercy to living beings, only then would Allah be pleased. After the country was liberated, the vultures were not seen as often. People said they had seen too many deaths and had too much to mourn. When the vultures took to the air, They would run over the boys' and girls' heads, jumping like planes taking off from a runway. Hassan would watch amazed until the birds grew small and disappeared in the sky. Morzina used to say, "Don't touch my feet, you're older than me." Hassan would say, "I am only 20 days older than you." "Well, older is older," she would say, "even if it is just by an hour." Whatever it is that brings the vultures, Hassan fails to pick up the smell. Still, his insatiable soul wanders past Morzina's reading room to breathe in a little of that chlorophyll-infused air. He can still hear the ruffling of vulture wings on the palm tree. This tree, the pride of the village, would undergo immolation, a misty flame of dark smoke bringing its dignity to tatters. The fire that caught on November 24, 1971, was a different color. Hassan's house had burned in that fire. He remembers it clearly. They had to take refuge near a wetland about 3 miles from the village. Hassan's family gathered under the date palm tree of their house that winter morning. The cold, yellow light fell on their raw skin. Morzina came through the mustard fields. One could see the pollen from the mustard flowers sticking to her feet. The yellow suited her fair demeanor. Perhaps she had applied it herself. Hassan remembered the wonderful lines from a poem by Jasimuddin. The longing for the yellow through a garland of mustard. The peas come out of their veils for the kiss. They were supposed to get juice from the date palms on their tree. Kalek tied a towel to his waist and climbed the tree like a squirrel. The thumbs in his 2 feet were bound together with a string of jute to help with the climbing. Kalek stared down at the cauldron hanging from his waist. Chomir shouted, "Kalek, Kalek, what are you looking at?" Kalek replied, "Snakes have left their skin in the juice." Hassan felt sad hearing it, as any child would who heard such news. Chomir, however, understood Kalek's cunning. No one would want to drink date palm juice after hearing such a thing. "Bring it down, either way," he told Kalek. Under the guise of inspecting the inside of the cauldron, Kalek inserted a straw and drank a fair amount. This was why most never called him for help. Even though he was a master at climbing trees, even those others were scared of. The village elder Fote Bibi had foretold, "Kalek will die falling off a tree." Whenever Kalek climbed a tree, many anxiously waited to see if the prophecy would come true. Many had become disillusioned with Kalek for not dying yet, some even with Fote Bibi. They would get Kalek to climb a tree to see if he would finally meet his end. Kalek didn't mind. He found it amusing. He would pretend to lose his balance to get their attention. Today was no exception. With the cauldron held tightly in his right fist, he had his other arm wrapped around the slender, rough body of the palm tree. A few steps down, his left arm slipped from the fog-wet stem. Hassan closed his eyes, unable to bear the horror of him falling. The other kids were more concerned with the loss of the palm juice than with Kalek's well-being. The adults weren't certain he would be safe either. Chomir had his hands outstretched, hoping to catch the man. Yet Kalek regained balance within moments. He kept hanging off one end like a branch, then brought his 2 feet around the tree again. Chomir said, "Bastard, this is how you will die one day." Hassan's father, Abdul Mottaleb, decreed from within the house, "From today, no one will let Abdul Kalek up a tree." Hassan had never seen his father's orders breached. No one would dare have Kalek climb a tree again. Yet Fote Bibi's prophecy would come true one day, despite his father's prohibition. Kalek had almost come down with the pot when Hassan's brother Abdul Ghaffar and his uncle Shafiuddin hurried in with the news. "The military has arrived in the village. We couldn't stop them. Leave now." Kalek let go of the palm juice cauldron, which landed on Hassan's head and broke. No one understood this event, given the magnitude of the news they had just heard. Even Hassan couldn't understand it. The sap ran from his hair down his face. He tasted the sweetness. He started shaking. His teeth started to clatter. Chomir grabbed his hand and brought him into the house. Waking from that reverie to the Falgun morning, Hassan has a difficulty finding meaning in his work and in the bleak regularity of life. Nevertheless, he prepares to head out. It is important for him to arrive at the office on time. When he steps into the office, one of his co-workers, Masood Alam, says, "Looking for your girl, my friend? She's joined the Prime Minister's entourage." The guys at the office often tease him about Bilu. Hassan says, "Nothing new about it, my friend. Didn't she accompany the Prime Minister to China a few days ago, too? Someone has to do the job for the paper." The lack of respect his compatriots showed Bilu bothered him, although he was not that progressive either. He admitted that the presence of women in the office created excitement, but also sometimes stopped him in his tracks. The newsroom, he forgets, is a place of constant war, where the contention between its inhabitants is more intense than the actual wars they cover. Hassan is often annoyed by the other male reporters' taunts. They know something happened between Bilu and him, and they never forget to remind him. That he is a married man now does not seem to hinder their nefarious suggestions. Bilu, too, is aware of such shenanigans, though as far as Hassan can tell, she does not mind. She does not care, Hassan thinks. When a person cannot accept the textual and practical knowledge given to him, he is regarded as having little intelligence. When you do not provide an avenue for education for women, how can you change them? After all, Lilabati, Banumoti, and the wife of Kalidasa were known to have intelligence of the highest order. Hassan and Bilu were friends in college. Bilu has chestnut eyes, and they called her a cat because of it in college. During her freshman year, she suffered a great many of these taunts. When she answered a question in class, someone would say, "Meow." At some point, she must have accepted this fate, must have started enjoying it too. This came to be what she was known for. Hassan was amazed at her ability to withstand and survive. When they became fellow journalists, they really hit it off. Hassan couldn't unravel the mystery of what happened between Bilu and him. There are references to such mysteries in the Holy Quran. One of Allah's 99 names is Batin, the one who is hidden. The blood in our veins rots to pus. It reeks of foul odor. Oh, the torment of this foul blood! What else have we kept hidden other than the stench of our blood? If Bilu is on another international assignment, what's the harm to him? He isn't being passed over. At least, he does not see it this way. Bilu has always been the smarter of the two. He often felt she could better handle a situation, better take advantage of it. A lot of work has piled up on his table. Hassan will have to go through it in the midst of his meandering thoughts. 4 people at the office have been promoted. The second time it has happened in 3 months. The newsroom is now absent of any new sub-editors. There are 5 people in one corner. 2 work during the day, 3 at night. The role of a sub-editor is hard to establish in a newspaper. They are like the housewives in a middle-class family, holding down the entire fort without getting any credit. The editor doesn't recognize you no matter how efficient you are. You are entitled only to his jabs. The sub-editors in the corner shake in fear of their continued existence. It reminds Hassan of Tolstoy's Kostomir. How precisely the life of a man atop an animal is drawn out. It makes one wonder if it's really a horse or an ongoing transformation. The Supreme Court has adjourned the hearing in one case. This news from BSS must be covered by the sub-editors as well. Hassan calls themselves paraphrasers. His co-workers hate his use of it. It sounds bad, at least to the sub-editor. It degrades their profession. They reason that one shouldn't call a blind man blind to his face, although the truth is anyone in this city can cover these stories with ease. The case was about Elida McDowell, an American. She brought 3 kilograms of heroin hidden on her body. She had an affecting face, much like the addictive qualities of her drug. She had smuggled heroin outside her skin. The British had taken away gold and brought in opium 200 years ago. She said she did it for her boyfriend. Hassan was well aware of the penalties paid by the hapless for the cause of love. He has been covering them since he's had this job. Such people seem ever ready to take the leap for their loved ones, in spite of their significant other's refusal to do the same. Men and women had lived together and divided their labor for eons before one was given any semblance of equality akin to the others. It is to society's detriment today that women are not allowed to have their rights completely. Hassan understood this in principle, though he could not shake off the social inertia that led him to behave like a typical man. In a different news item, France had conducted a nuclear test at Mururoa Atoll. The president had said they were in favor of nuclear tests. There weren't many protests about it. People in Melbourne had held a rally. They put up posters of the president with the words, "Wanted, Environment Criminal." Couldn't there have been a rally here in Dhaka? The opposition has called for a 3-day strike here, even though the strikers do not know what the result of this strike will be. Couldn't there have been at least a half-day strike against the nuclear tests? Hassan wonders if he should call one. However, he loses his enthusiasm after discussing it with his co-workers, who treated him with ridicule. He has another idea: to hang a poster around his shoulders all day that says, "This earth is mine." At night, he'll leave the poster at the French embassy. Perhaps the largest protest he heard about was that a company in Japan had decided to stop selling French alcohol. Greenpeace once pursued a boycott of German products to save the North Sea from environmental pollution. This seems to him mere politics, merely beer foam, only hype, the sort that profiteers like. They kiss this foam every once in a while whenever their bait is taken. Hassan hates reading about this on a daily basis. The editor calls Hassan to his room. Hassan feels his chest thumping. He starts to perspire. He doesn't know how to talk in front of that man. He stumbles over his words. Most of them don't have a reason to talk to the editor anyway. Yet the editor calls him in sometimes. He says he is biased toward those who have merit. Hassan doesn't know if he is one of those, though. Anyone can get a good result in college like he did. The importance of these results only goes so far. At some point, friends and co-workers say he did so well at university, yet he couldn't do anything of worth afterward. Some would go further. He couldn't even draft a letter properly. I asked him a question about spelling. He had to check the dictionary to confirm it. Hassan quickly combs his hair before entering the editor's office. He does this quietly. The editor likes obedience. If it was any other job, he would have gone beyond this. The editor says, "If I wanted to be referred to as Sir, I could have been a minister or secretary." But when they call him Bhai, that isn't any less of a title. Hassan doesn't understand why he had to be called in. They punish people in absentia. They wouldn't even know what they were being convicted of. Perhaps he will arrive at the office one day and see that his position is no longer available. He'll be handed a letter. They'll say they're going through financial difficulties, that you had given good service, that they wish you well in your future endeavors and the accounts department will take care of your dues. But they never do. Hassan has seen a lot of dramas on TV about the plight of primary school teachers and their pensions. There's been a lot written in the papers, too. Journalists like him had written about it. 1.5 years ago in this office, Jalal was terminated. Every day from 9 to 5 he would come and sit in front of the accounts department and worry about his children, but he never got his dues. Hassan knows why. Jalal never got around to being in the union. The editor has called in Hassan so he could read him his poetry. Hassan's fear disappears. Hassan used to write poetry too and has published a few works in newspapers. But he doesn't write anymore. Why he used to in the first place and why he doesn't anymore, he has no idea. He doesn't even know if it's a good thing or not. A few lines of poetry appeal to him once in a while. The feeling doesn't last long. It fizzles out. Yet there was a time when he thought that life was incomplete without poetry. Now he has trouble differentiating between a complete and an incomplete life. Hassan knows he won't like the editor's poem. We do not audit ourselves. We write an editorial and expect others to call and praise us. If not, we praise ourselves. This is how we become a hotshot editor one day. Hassan has no respect for such poetry, yet he readies himself to utter a few words of hollow praise. Later that day in the office, Alam asks, "What are you up to, my fellow translator? Hurry up with your work today. My wife and I must head to the birthday party of our daughter's friend." Hassan is upset. "How many more birthdays must you attend? Are you going with your own wife or the colonel's?" The others are whispering. The reporting editor sits opposite them. No one shares anything with him for fear of the entire office hearing about it. Alam is also unbearable. Once he used to write stories. some of which had been printed in newspapers and magazines. Now he only thinks of women. He has been dating a colonel's wife, who was having the affair to avenge her husband's infidelity. Alam shows Hassan his new watch. "Made in Switzerland," he says. "You can stay pure, like Father Sergei." "You can celebrate your watch after work," Hassan says, and returns to his work. He looks at Alida McDowell's picture for a long time. How could a stranger look so fascinating? Alam says, "Did you know these are Sahibi diseases? Before the British had arrived, we did not have gonorrhea or syphilis. There were only ailments of the stomach." He snatches the picture from Hassan's hand. "Don't fall in love with the picture, my fellow poet." Hassan waits outside his office. He lives about 5 kilometers away, and at 1:45 in the morning, the only viable way to reach home is using the office's taxi service. Most days he doesn't get the transportation on time. He has to wait, which is annoying. Many papers these days have bought their own cars, but their policies have hardly changed. Their drivers are aggressive on the road, thinking the journalists would save them with their powers. Yet these powers aren't like any other. They cannot be applied everywhere. It tends to reside with the police and the criminals. It depends on whether one has a better relationship with the owner or the editor. Of course, these days the owners themselves are editors of their papers. You don't exactly need to be a journalist now to be an editor. Hassan waits an hour for the transport before heading for the bus. He wonders if he should walk home. He finds himself enveloped in the night's affections, like a shy monkey hiding its face in the trees. He doesn't come outside that much during the day. The sunlight gets to his eyes. The Lord has created the night for us to rest, but Hassan isn't privy to this gift. He has been left out of the Lord's blessing. Perhaps through his own actions, it has come to this. Who can walk on like a simple man anyway? Who is able to stop in this darkling light? Slowly, he quits all hope for the bus and walks. Dhaka at night has a different sort of beauty, like the nights one reads about in the stories of Arabia. Like the hungry heart of Meher Ali that longs for the poet's freedom, Hassan finds himself longing for something exceptional to take place. Anything other than loneliness and the anxiety of seeing a familiar face on the road.